Today, I am thrilled to bring on the show a leader, a CEO of a major global Tier 1 company who truly understands the value of culture. He is Pat DeRamo, and he is the CEO of Martinrea International, a Tier 1 supplier focusing on lightweight structures and propulsion systems. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Pat, who are you as a leader?
It's a really good question, and I've been at it for 40 years. A couple of OEMs and now 3 suppliers, so I've had a lot of diversity in my background. I would say consistently I tend to be collaborative with the people that work in my staff, let's say, because I think it's important they buy into what we're doing. I tend to have a lot of loyalty to my people. I have to have people who I trust, and I give them a lot of latitude. Typically, we'll give people quite a lot of latitude as long as they're producing. It's very important to me to have an objective. What's my target? What do I got to accomplish this year over the next 5 years? So for me to do that, I got to have a plan. I'm going to have a path. And when I draw that path up, I do it with the people that work with me. That's very important. It's not, here's my plan, here's what you need to go do today. And then we measure along the way. Are we ahead or are we behind? And if you're getting behind, where do you need help? I have certain rules. I never dress a person down publicly. If I have an issue with someone, it's always in private. I always tell people a bad decision is better than no decision because at least we learn something. I acknowledge and to an extent almost encourage some level of mistakes because people learn from mistakes. So just don't sink the ship while you're at it. But if you don't have that environment, people won't take risks. And if you really want to move ahead, in our business in particular, which is a very tough business issue, you have to have people who are willing to stick their necks out. And they'll do that if they know you have their back. They won't do it if they don't think you do or that they know you don't. So I try to create that type of an environment where people feel comfortable. The people that are on my team, they don't have to necessarily love each other, but they have to treat each other with dignity and respect. They have to respect each other's work, and they have to be loyal to each other relative to the work that gets done, and that tends to work for me very well. Fortunately, I have a very good staff who does get along really well, and over time, I continue to refine that, and it's worked really well for us.
Now, Pat, we need to tear into that. You said you believe in collaboration and trust. Have you always been that kind of leader? Because when we started in this industry, you and I, it was very much command and control model. Was there a point in time that you evolved to understand the power of collaboration, or have you always been that kind of leader?
I think I have that tendency as far as an individual. I've never been a person who likes to be told what to do. And therefore, I tend to not tell people what to do. I tend to try to encourage them and coach them in a direction. I'm not talking about just work, but just in general. So I was fortunate that when I was hired out of university, I started with Saturn, or what used to be called Saturn. And it was a very difficult place to work because it had a very unique contract. But the other part of it was General Motors really put some provocative people in the organization there to try to change the environment of how work got done. And so they sent a bunch of people out before they formed the company and said, study what works. So they did everything from NUMMI, which was the Toyota GM joint venture at the time, to many non-automotive companies based on their success. And then they came back, and this was a team of both union and management people, and created this is what we should do type of a company. And of course, GM announced that, started building a plant, and I just happened to be graduating at that time. And I was really fortunate when I came out. I was an engineer by degree, but apparently I wasn't a very good one because they put me in management as soon as there was an opportunity in what would be considered a supervisory role. But in that interim, while I was in engineering and working toward the operation, I would say, a guy took me under his wing. He decided, I'm going to make you successful, and coached me. And he was a really good coach. He was a great leader. All the collaborative type of things that you want people to use with you, he used. He could be really tough on people when the time came and tough on situations, but he did things right.
Yes.
And so that was really good for me to see and experience. And there were a number of people in that organization at that time like that. They were recruited specifically because they had this style. So there was a lot of that. And I'm not going to say everybody by any means, because the majority of people all came from just what you said, a command and control environment. But I was really lucky. I was lucky with him. I had 2 different women who were my boss at Saturn as well at the time frame, different phases along the way, who were also very much like that. And then one other gentleman who was very similar as well. I really got exposed to nothing but that. But I experienced all the tough sides too. I had to deal directly with the union, and it was called consensus decision making. And to this day, no one can explain to me what that really means.
No.
And which is why it didn't work. But it was really, you had to learn how to negotiate with everything you did. If you wanted to do anything, the union had to agree. And they had smart people in there too, right? So you had to learn to negotiate. And you had to appreciate what they had to deal with. They had to get elected. So certain decisions were tough or impossible for them to make. So you had to find ways to help them be successful while you got what you wanted or needed. That taught me at a very young age, right out of school. That was probably the best exposure I could have had to get me on this track.
It's interesting. I always find that people always take it back to one person in their career that they remember. Look, how many years ago was that? 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, and you can remember that guy. You remember how he made you think, how he made you feel, and look at how he influenced your leadership style, which in turn influences so many others. I think sometimes as leaders, we forget the impact that we can have on people's lives. Just by helping somebody along and coaching them and guiding them, we can really change their life.
Yeah, I have a tendency, and some would even accuse me of, on occasion, maybe even too much empathy sometimes. So I really try to put myself in people's shoes. And the good news is, when somebody's really struggling or had a problem, over 40 years, I've had that problem at some point. And I know how I was treated. Sometimes it was good, sometimes not so good, and I know how I would respond in that same situation. And over my career, we've had some major issues that came up because some people make mistakes, okay? There's a school of thought where, and I've been challenged, why don't you fire that person? They made this huge mistake that's cost us millions of dollars. And I say, prior to this mistake, that person was a rock star. But suddenly they make a mistake, and that's what we're going to do. That's what I would do, somebody would say. And then say, why would I take a person who's learned the most valuable lesson that they could possibly learn and know what not to do next time and what to do next time correctly, to never make a mistake like that again and give them to a competitor? Why would I do that? We have a stronger person now. And I've got many examples of those, and they are some of our strongest leaders in their organization, including Martinrea's.
I think that so many leaders would be concerned and fear judgment by not taking that action to fire the guy.
And you're exactly right. And I was judged. There's no doubt in my mind. But you just got to say, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what I know is best for my experience. And I had to tell some people, it's not your decision. It's my decision, and that's what we're going to do. And retrospectively, I would do it again. You have to be able to understand that people are going to talk around the water cooler about you when they don't agree with your decision, but it's not just the way you treat people. It's in many things that you do, right? And you just got to accept that. And as long as you're moving your organization forward toward that objective that I talked about earlier, and I look at turnover. When I look at people who specifically have worked for me over the years, the turnover is very low. And when they do go, there's exceptions. There's ones that have been asked to leave many times. That happen. I shouldn't say many times, but it happens.
Yes.
But ones who actually said, hey, I've got something else. And that happens on occasion. And I can say every time it's happened to me, I said to the person, I would go to if I were you. It's a better opportunity than you have here right now. And so I feel really good about that. I feel, okay, that's all right.
You must be very comfortable with your leadership style and comfortable in your own skin to not be concerned about the judgment that people would put upon you when you make those decisions. I think that there's a lot of leaders out there that because of the command and control model we've had in this industry, they feel like they've got to be the tough guy. They've got to show that they're aggressive. You talked about respect. They've got to berate people in meetings because that's how we do things in the automotive industry. If you don't behave that way, you're soft and meek and mild, and you have no business being a leader in the auto industry. That certainly was the model that we used to have. So you've embraced a much more authentic leadership style. How do you continue to perpetuate that within your organization? Because you must have people coming in that think more around a command and control.
Yeah. So first off, you have to accept the fact it's not that I don't care what people say. If you're in those situations, you just got to learn to live with it, okay? And so when you have people you're trying to, for lack of a better term, convert.
Yes.
Okay? A lot of it's just what you said. It's what people think people are going to think about them and how they're going to be judged. And you got to help people get past that and show them how making those good decisions, which are also, and really, tougher decisions in a lot of ways, are better for them and the people that are working, not just for them in this condition, but around them, because people see it.
Yes.
So for every person that said, in this case, I think you should have got taken care of so-and-so, there were a lot more that sat around and said, oh, if I make a mistake, he's going to have my back.
Yes.
He's going to give me a chance. So I'm not going to be afraid to make a mistake.
And also not afraid to take a risk and come
right.
forward with the next innovation that perhaps will be the most successful product for the company. And I think that's a short-sighted view that a lot of people have. They feel they're so concerned about, oh, I got to make this call. I've got to fire this guy because he made a mistake. But they don't understand the impact on culture. And you want to banish fear in the organization.
The reality is, firing someone is the easy way out.
Yes.
That's the easy way out. Now, there are times if somebody who just doesn't work in your culture, I've had that condition, people who won't get on board with the strategy, okay, and then in my way past, I've had people who broke the law. And those three reasons, to me, are good reasons.
Yes.
Majority of other people, you can get there as long they're at the position where they're working for the CEO or someone who's running a group. They didn't get there by luck. They got there because they work hard and they're capable. So now you can take that capability and refine it. And honestly, it's a heck of a lot better to go to work when people know you're trying to have a golden rule culture and you can show it by your actions, not just by words. And I think at Martinrea, we've really been able to work hard on that. And I think it's shown itself, especially in the last number of years, through these very difficult times.
There's a lot of activity with Martinrea around culture. You take it very seriously and you have your guiding principles.
Yep.
And the golden rule is around respect. Is that right?
It's our first principle.
Yeah.
And it's treat people with dignity and respect, or golden rule. We use both terms. Even when we started our DEI activity, we rooted it in that first principle. And so when the backlash came, with all the, we're not going to do DEI anymore, we didn't even change one thing because the base was the same. It's about treating people with respect, and it works. That one is very important, and we have many others. And in our last one, we actually modified with the sustainability environment and changed it to leave it better. And then there's a number of other things in between. My favorite being work hard, play hard, which we do some of that as well. But yeah, we really take our vision seriously of making people's lives better. We know who we are out there to please, which is our customers, our people, our suppliers and environment, and of course, the people who own our company, which are our stockholders.
Yeah.
So we understand that, and these principles, which actually have been around in Martinrea for some time, but you have to have the right environment for them to take root. And they've been able to take root, I think, over the last decade or so. And now they're really core to how we do things.
Yeah. I certainly felt that when I visited last year.
Oh,
You
okay.
can see it. It's real. It's not a poster on a wall in a conference room. It's real. People understand it. And they're always talking about how do you practice these behaviors? How do you practice these principles? That's how you bring a culture alive. And then, of course, you model those principles yourself and your leadership team.
Yeah, and it starts at our chairman. Our chairman in fact, wrote the 10 principles before I even joined. He calls me his work partner, his work wife, because the two of us have really worked it from both ends of the organization. And certainly my staff clearly understands it and emulates it to their ability. And I try to do my best at it as to, we're all human beings. We all get mad sometimes. But the ability to stay objective in times like we're having right now is very important. And I'm really proud of the people I work with because they work very hard at not jumping off a cliff and really working the system the way you should.
Yeah. So we're sitting here today in a period of massive disruption in the industry. We've got Chinese OEMs eating our lunch when it comes to producing EVs. We've got tariffs. So the idea that we're in a period of disruption is almost laughable. It's almost complete chaos because we don't know what's going to happen next. How do you lead through a time of chaos, Pat? Your role as a leader is to bring calm to the chaos, but you have no idea what you're going to wake up to tomorrow morning. How do you do that?
Let's go back to when this landslide of events started, when the pandemic hit, when the industry shut down. We did what everybody else did. We got people working from home. We got our plants all safetied up, if you will. And the OEMs got together and created standards very quickly and executed on those standards. And we played a substantial role in that. And in fact, we made ventilator stands for the government. And then once everything started up, we met every day. Everybody's virtual, of course. The people in the plants are not. They're working. So I personally visited as many plants as I could. I couldn't get across the border at first, so I was just staying in the U.S. And then I got into Canada once in a while, and I can get into Mexico once in a while. And so it was slow getting into the other countries. But leadership had to make an appearance. So the leaders were out and about in their own countries, keeping the spirits up. And that made a difference. Probably the most pivotal point inside, I'd say, our organization from a collaboration level was when we had to start figuring out how to recover costs for inflation and loss. The supplier community had never really done this before. I'd worked for OEMs for 24 years. I'm like, why aren't we knocking on the door? And the first reaction I had from one of our sales guys was, are you crazy? We can't go ask for this money. We were very early in the process. We didn't wait a long time. But what was really cool about it is we got our commercial people out of our business units, our operations people, our sales people, our lawyers who played a really key role, our SCO leadership, our technical leadership, just key people, twice a week, started working the process. And pretty soon it started to work. It started to work very well. And I think a lot of other suppliers have done similar things, but far majority of suppliers have not recovered what's been lost. The inflationary difference might be 50%. If you're lucky, you got 80% of it, but there's still a gap. And until new generations of products come, you're not going to be able to fill that gap. So here comes the EVs. That was our opportunity. We'll get the EV work. When the EVs pick up, our economics will be back to normal and we can move on. We all know what happened there. The EV lack of sales have only compounded the problem. So now you've got a supply base out there that hasn't recovered from the inflation, hasn't recovered from the EV investments, which is really hurting some suppliers.
Yes.
Really bad. Some went all in, but no matter who you are, if you have any EV activity, you've been hurt. Okay, it just depends on what level. So now you've compounded that. And now the tariffs hit. Okay, so what do you do to lead through that? It's getting everybody in a straight line. This is what we're going to do. Talking about it every day. Are we ahead or are we behind? Where's our weak point? Who's not on board? What do we got to do? who do we have to escalate to? What do you need me as the CEO to do? Whatever it is. And we, I would say as an organization, are stronger now internally in our ability to take something from A to B than we ever have been before. So out of this crisis and the pandemic and the supply chain and then the inflation and then the EV, we've actually taken advantage of it in some respects and become much stronger. But you got to get a tailwind at some point.
Yeah.
And just when it's time to get a tailwind, here comes the tariffs. So we're in day one, and a lot of frustrated people, obviously, at work. I was on the phone all morning. You go around, you slap backs, you kiss babies. You got to say, hey, this is just one more thing we got to fight through. I think the thing that's most frustrating in this case is you're absolutely right. China is kicking our tail, okay? And to their credit, 25 years ago or whatever it was, they set out and said, we're going to be number one by 2025. And they don't think quarter to quarter. They think long term. They did get tremendous state support. You talked about that in one of your podcasts, but it's significant. It's not just a little, because I work with a lot of Chinese companies over the years. It's a lot. And so when the North American continent and the Europeans as well need to be sitting down saying, what do we have to do to literally catch up? You have to get together. You got to use the USMCA. You got to focus on technology. You got to open up material supply chains. You got to figure out how to get rid of the borders. And I'm not talking about people crossing the border, of course, but fluid borders for trafficking parts back and forth across the border, because we have many assemblies. They'll go back 2-3 times, maybe 4. And you want it to be like going across state lines, not like going across country lines in the case of the business. So you want to strengthen the North American business so it can compete. And that won't happen to the USMCA in and of itself. It's going to take tremendous investment. And so if you said, okay, how do we catch up with China? To me, it's 3 steps. First step is, and I know this is controversial, but you do have to inhibit their ability to come to North America initially to give you time.
Yeah.
Then the government has to participate. That's how the Chinese did it. And I don't think we should do it like they did it, but our government needs to quit fighting about the border and tariffs and take the money that's being wasted and ask for investment. You may have heard this when we were at the MEMA conference. In my view, we cannot build a production car in the United States right now. You can't do it. If it was designed here and you went out to the supply base and said, we want you to buy all your tools here, you can't do it. There's not capacity. And so if you want to create that capacity, you need investment. And so the government's going to have to create an environment to make investment easy, to help with the investment and move it along. And help with things like if you want to have EVs and you want to have your own material, you got to mine it here, you got to refine it here. Light speed to develop a mine right now is 10 to 15 years. That's not going to get you there. There's going to have to be a lot of changes. So quit wasting time like we are today and start figuring out how we're going to get back up on our feet, because we're getting creamed. But you can't think about tomorrow. You got to think about the day after that, and where you want to be in 10 years, what do you want to be in 15 years? You got to work a plan. So this one's tough. The tariff thing's compounding all these other issues is really difficult, because it's scary. What the hell? And after all this, now when we need you the most, leadership in our governments, you're all going to get ready to fight. One shot across the bow. Now you guys in the other 2 countries are going to shoot across the bow, and you're going to waste everybody's time. We need you to allow us to do what we know to do. Because if you set targets in front of this industry, and you've seen it for years, you don't need to tell the OEMs what to build. You need to tell the OEMs what they need to do, what targets they need to reach, and they know what to build.
Yes.
And right now, they don't know what to build. They really don't know what to do in some ways. So we're waiting on the new portfolio. The RFQs are like slow because no one wants to invest in another vehicle till they know what it should be. It's a mess, and you need support, and we're not getting that.
Yeah.
And these tariffs are just making it worse.
And I agree with you that we need something in place to stop the Chinese vehicles coming into the U.S. to buy us time.
Yeah.
But the clock has been ticking for a long time. We don't need this distraction, this massive distraction, and in the words of Jim Farley, that's going to blow a hole
It is.
in the auto industry. We need to focus on manufacturing in the U.S., but we need to focus on what this industry should be reinventing itself into. And right now, we don't know what that is.
The U.S. can't do it alone.
Yes.
Okay? You need, at bare minimum, you need resources. And Canada is a gold mine, literally. Okay? And they've got really good people.
Yes.
Really good technical people. And then in Mexico, you know, where it used to be you had to go down there and train everybody.
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
Now we're bringing them in to help train our people because we have such a gap in skill. You need all three countries. And if you get all three countries with one plan and the government's cooperating, instead of rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, we can make things happen very quickly. But it's going to have that type of government support, and they got to get out of our way.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. In the long run, tariffs or inhibiting the Chinese from coming in over a long period of time never works. Nothing ever like that works. But because they've been at it for such a long time, because they've had state support, which is not the North American way, then we've got to figure out how to play ball differently. And we have to have some time to do that. Car programs take a long time. Development of technologies take a long time. But there's no better place in the world than North America when it comes to innovation. So, like I said, get out of the way and let us work.
Yeah. Innovation provided we have the right leadership and culture in place to allow that innovation to flourish quickly, because speed is everything right now.
That's why you got to let people take risks. You got to take risks with them.
Yeah. Pat, the 21 Traits of Authentic Leadership, I know you've taken a look at that document. What stands out to you as the most important trait of leadership?
So it's funny. I read all of it, and I read it again, and I started circling words and lines that I liked in all of 21 of them, honestly. And I said, okay, I can't pick 21. So I came down to 5: coaching, long-term vision, and understanding where you want to go, long-term planning, trust. And of course, those are the big ones. But of course, today you have to include resilience.
Yes, that's right.
It's such a big part of our existence these days. And when you look at where those overlap versus what I told you earlier as far as my personal leadership style, those overlap the most with the way I like to manage and lead and the way I like to be led. When I went through the hiring process at Martinrea, they put me through a whole bunch of testing, the recruiters. And funny thing is that our chairman did the same thing. He says, hey, I'm going to do that too, just to see how we line up. And I can't remember how many traits there were. Let's say there were 16 traits. We lined up exactly the same on 15.
No way.
And the one we didn't was process. I'm a very process-oriented.
Yes.
And he's not.
Oh.
And that's where we butt heads on occasion once in a while. But it also creates a lot of new things and creativity within the organization. So we're very much aligned, which has really helped us move things along. So if I had to pick one, it's really tough.
You can do it. Come on.
Maybe supporting and coaching.
Yes, yes. That makes perfect sense given everything that you said.
There's things in all the other ones I thought were traits either I'd like to think I have or try to achieve. If I had to boil down to one, that would be it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now it's time to take a turn into the personal side. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We were looking at the guitar here in the studio earlier. What's your favorite band?
ELO.
Really?
Yeah. Growing up, I was big. ELO, Alan Parsons, Steely Dan, and Toto were my bands.
Wow, ELO. I haven't heard that word in such a long time.
You know what's funny is in 2018, hadn't been to the U.S. in 30 years, and when they were here the first time, or the last time, I was too young. So they came to Little Caesars, when they've been there twice since, by the way, and I went and saw them with my best friend from high school, who we were both big fans. After all this time, we finally got to go see ELO, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What is the last live performance of anything that you've seen? Play, theater, band, or anything?
My wife and I love going to movies. We just don't get to them as often because everything's on TV now.
Yeah, I know.
And it's simpler. Now, we like to watch action series
Okay.
like Reacher.
Oh, you Reacher fans.
I'm a big
Okay.
Reacher fan.
Okay.
And I like Landman. I don't know if you've seen Landman.
I
It's
love
crazy.
Landman. Yes.
Yeah. Tulsa King. We're a big
Haven't
fan.
gotten into that yet,
That's-
but Landman
yeah.
had me hooked.
That's one of the best. That's one of the best. And I'm a big sci-fi fan. I mean, my wife's not as much. She'll watch it with me, but I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I watch all the Star Treks and that kind of thing too. So
What's the last book you read?
the last book I read that was, I would say,
You can say mine.
I'm still reading yours. Well, it was a science fiction book called Terran Menace.
Oh,
Yeah, just finished that.
Yeah.
And then probably the best book I've ever read was Why Nations Fail. You know, when it comes to more of a workbook, if
Yeah.
you will. I think that's a fantastic book. Favorite book of all time is probably The Dark Tower that Stephen King wrote. But, so I don't read as much as I'd like to, but I do listen a lot because I'm driving a lot. I live in Tennessee half the time. I live in Michigan part-time,
Yeah.
in Toronto a lot. So when I'm driving, especially on a weekend, I'll listen to a book.
oh. What's your favorite podcast?
When I'm with my wife, we always listen to mysteries, like the Dateline type of things.
Okay.
And so forth. And I haven't listened to a lot. I've listened to yours.
Yes. Thank you.
So I've enjoyed those. But I don't listen to a lot of podcasts unless I'm with her for some reason. I tend to listen to a book or I'm on the phone. It's during the week. I'm on the phone the whole time. But that kind of rounds me out a little bit. I suppose.
I see it. I see it. Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you.